pensarlo. Dime cuánto te va a tomar así. Yo me voy preparando y yo pensándote y solamente tú pensando en mí de repente. Yeah. Dime lo que estamos haciendo. Sí, tiempo estamos perdiendo.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're going to get it kicked off, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Thank you so much, DJ Day Groovy. Hope everyone's having a lovely night tonight. I'm 20 years old. I'm from the west side of Washington College, medical science, and starting January, I'll be taking esthetician classes, and I'd like to pass it to my co-host.
Thank you, Taylor. You were going a bit in and out there, but hi, everybody. My name is Sierra Miller. My pronouns are she and her. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior at South Shore International College Prep. I'm also a part of Chicago Youth Service Corps, and you might have seen me yesterday. And if you didn't, my project was focusing on giving back food to the homeless. The skills that I learned while participating in this project were more people skills and also why it's important to give back to my community. And this ties into my future goals, which consist of traveling around the world and experiencing different communities. Fun fact about me, I learned Chinese for 2 years, and I also got the experience to go to China for 1 summer. Without further ado, I am so excited to be here today, and I'm going to get into the agenda. So first, we're going to hear an overview from Adam. We're also going to have a keynote speaker today. And we have an Ask the City panel where we ask your questions that you guys sent in. And lastly, we're gonna have announcements. Now take it away, Adam.
Thank you so much, Sierra and Taylor. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chicago Youth Service Corps' Elevate Your Voice Town Hall. My name is Adam Roth. I'm one of the program managers for the Chicago Youth Service Corps, and we are all thankful for each and every one of you for demonstrating commitment to our city's future. Our program comprises about 400 youth from all across the city. Almost 2/3 of you are 18 or below, and you represent diverse neighborhoods such as Austin, Auburn Gresham, Roseland, and Greater Grand Crossing. 58 out of the 77 community areas are represented. 17% are experiencing homelessness, and over 11% speak English as a second language. With such a diverse variety of backgrounds represented, you're all helping the Chicago Youth Service Corps represent the entirety of the city, and in particular, the neighborhoods that need the most support in order to deliver equitable outcomes. The Chicago Youth Service Corps is a phenomenal opportunity to have your voice heard by leaders from all across the city and Mayor Lightfoot's administration. But just as importantly, it's an opportunity to act upon your voice and the voices of all your neighbors. We are happy to see that you have put forward a combination of small and large-scale ideas for the city. Trash pickup, building repairs, providing for the homeless, and providing equitable support for citizens during the current COVID-19 pandemic were some of the immediate, tangible ideas that you guys have put forth. Other issues focus on more structural issues, reallocating funds toward underserved regions of the city, tackling disparities between the rich and the poor, and tackling the rise of food deserts across the city. Both large and small scale are necessary. The Chicago Youth Service Corps will give you the tools to think big while acting locally. One of the questions we put to you in your applications were, if you were the mayor, what would you do differently? And we've heard many different great responses, ranging from redistribution of resources to a greater emphasis on youth outreach. They're all phenomenal responses. And throughout all of them, one that stood out was just 4 words: change what I can. Those 4 words highlight the purpose of the Chicago Youth Service Corps. No one Corps member or no one program will solve all the issues facing our city. But as you get started in your projects in your neighborhoods, the work you do as an individual will build on those of other teams. Increments of change can snowball into powerful effects for our city. and we are excited to see what your service will bring to the people of Chicago. Know that you have a citywide support network dedicated to helping you maximize your potential and impact for the city. And together, we'll change what we can. It is now my pleasure to introduce Giovanni from the West Side Health Authority as our first share-out speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Adam. Hello, everyone. My name is Giovanni Secundino, and I am 19 years old. I'm from Little Village, and in my past, I volunteered in my old middle school teaching students about high school and college, giving them the knowledge they need for their future. And I'm a proud graduate from Curie Metropolitan High School, class of 2020. In my past, I've also worked for Once Upon a Chicago Media Team and the Photography for All program, improving my skills for life and for the workforce. And today I'm here to talk to you about West Side Health Authority. We are one of the programs they offer, and we are making Young versus Heard one show at a time. We encourage youth to speak their minds, their hopes, their dreams on mic to elevate their voices, just like me and my team on our podcast, Chicago Reloaded.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Chicago Reloaded. I'm your girl, Obisha, and I'm from the west side of Chicago.
I'm Harvey. I'm from the west side of Chicago.
I'm Fallon. I'm from the south side of Chicago.
I'm Giovanni. I'm from the south side of Chicago.
I know y'all are wondering who we are and what we are about. We are a podcast based in Chicago. We're going to talk about a multitude of topics such as art, culture, food, society, politics, self-care, mental health, you name it, we're talking about it.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap this up. You can catch us every week at Chicago Reloaded, and don't forget to follow us on the gram. And remember, we are Chicago, and you've been reloaded.
Alrighty then. If you like that, then please go check out our podcast on Chicago Reloaded on Spotify, and remember to follow us on Instagram at Chicago Reloaded.
Thank you so much, Giovanni, for that awesome share. I'll make sure you guys go tap into the podcast. But why did you guys name the podcast Chicago Reloaded?
Well, it was very tricky to try and come up with one name, something so unique, something so, general that could represent us, especially because we are the next generation. We're going to carry on the torch from all the proud adults that are currently on here as well. And when we're trying to see what can we do to reteach our generation, okay, we need to learn this and that, which are all the things that you heard about in the trailer. So it's really about, reloading and rebranding ourselves and relearning for the next generation to come so we can teach them and move on the torch.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. I'm definitely going to go check that podcast out. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Robinson. Shanta Robinson is an assistant professor in the School of Social Service Administration at the University of Chicago. She began her professional career as a high school history teacher and later earned her PhD in educational studies. Her academic training provides a unique lens in examining how the problems of schooling are intersectionally connected to issues of difference, sameness, and power. It is her goal to present solutions towards more equitable schooling practices and policies. Most recently, her work focuses on the educational experiences and occupational goals of adolescents experiencing homelessness. In her free time, she waxes philosophically at InsideHigherEd.com, teachingtolerance.org, and by appointment at Southside Chicago Eateries. Now, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Sierra. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to Lisa Davis, to Demi Collins, and everyone at Chicago Youth Service Corps for all that you do to make this program a success for everyone involved. It is my pleasure to be here tonight. In my work, I attempt to show up for the folks who have been disenfranchised by century-old and sustaining systems of oppression. In my work and in my practice, I am accountable to all of the Black, brown, straight, queer, femme, the homeless, the houseless, young people who have ever been called weird, aggressive, or placed on the margins of society for daring to dream big and live freely. I'm going to talk to you this early evening about the power of education. And I know what you're thinking. Of course, you, Dr. Robinson, would be in favor of education and would promote the power of education to all others. Because it seems to have worked for you in all positive ways. But stay with me and let me explain my rationale for this keynote tonight. And once done, you be the judge of whether education is truly power. We will begin by watching a short 2-minute clip, and then I'll continue my remarks.
This is Birmingham, the South's mightiest industrial city as the world knew it this week.
In May 1963, Hrabowski was in the Children's March, organized by Martin Luther King Jr., a march made infamous when Sheriff Eugene Bull Connor unleashed dogs and fire hoses on the demonstrators. In the midst of it was 12-year-old Freeman Hrabowski, who had his own encounter with Bull Connor.
He picked me up, he spat in my face and threw me into the paddy wagon.
He spit on you?
He did indeed. He did indeed. It was an awful experience, and it took years for me to get over that. And it was my mother who said, when he died, and she cried, and I said, why are you crying for him? And she said, he was somebody's child. He was somebody's child. And I remember we had a special moment together, and it was a cathartic experience for me to put all of that in perspective, that we all are the products of our childhood experiences. We are. There's good in each person. I have to believe that. But we do what we have been taught to do. And it takes a lot to get beyond that. The power of education is that we can question anything we've been told. We can ask, is this the right way? And that, why have we made all the progress we've made in this country? It's because people have done just that. It's taken education to push people to rethink the way things were, because people in power are always comfortable with the way things were.
The Children's March of 1963 was called a turning point in the civil rights movement. Over 4,000 children took to the streets of Birmingham, Alabama, in order to march for their civil rights. They left the classroom of the city schools and marched in order to not only bring attention to the lack of civil rights for Black folk in the South, but they marched in order to get arrested. And arrested they did. Children as young as 5 years old spent days in jail before they were released to their parents. And it changed the trajectory of civil rights in this country. Indeed, every major social movement for substantial change has happened because of the power of young people, of the people we call children or teenagers or young adults. More examples. Young people led the fight for peace during the Vietnam War. Young people pushed this country to divest from apartheid South Africa. Young people are currently pushing this country for reasonable gun control laws. Young people led to the successful election of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And yes, I meant to say those names in that order. 57 years later, here we are in Chicago, Illinois, living through two global pandemics, COVID-19 and anti-Black racism. 57 years, and people are still marching in the streets to gain equality and equity and civil rights. And we have to ask, why? Why are we still on our feet, asking particularly young people to wear down their shoes once again to fight for civil rights? Because of education. Or more bluntly, let me talk about the lack thereof of education. This country has seen a divestment in education that is, in my opinion, criminal. People often balk at defunding the police and the prison industrial complex, but we have, as a country, been defunding educational institutions for Black, brown, and impoverished communities for nearly 50 years. Why is that? If education is not that important, why spend so much money to keep millions of children from it? Because education is power. I don't mean the act of education of what it has become these days, right? Sitting in well-partitioned rows, all quiet in the classroom, curriculum detached from real-world significance. Not that education. True education that teaches young people how to critically interrogate their own lives and their society, how to be citizens of the world, but not beholden to the world. True, real education focuses on everything that is possible if we think critically and imagine the impossible. At times, in our rush to fix problems, in our rush to figure out the solution quickly, we forget about the process. We forget that we must understand the problem first. That's one of the greatest things about education. It is all about process. Even math class, where they seem so possessed with you getting the right answer. True education is about the process. How you do things is just as important as the outcome of things. If there is no justice in the process, how can we expect justice in the outcomes? One of the most insidious and harmful things the society's culture does to us, and young people in particular, is that if we fail, if we don't achieve our dreams and become rich or successful in a particular, specific, narrow way, it is because of our individual failures. It's because we aren't smart enough, or we aren't motivated enough, or we aren't disciplined enough. On the flip side, it convinces us that if we do achieve our wildest dreams, it's also because of our individual successes. You did it all by yourself, but you didn't. Neither did any of the folks who populate the Forbes 100 richest people in the world. No person is an island. No one achieves success without the help and assistance of others, including our social systems in this country. That's one of the lovely things about this program, the Chicago Youth Service Corps. The purpose or mission, as stated on its website, is that, quote, during challenging times and natural disasters, research suggests that teenagers feel better when they can turn their attention to supporting others in a meaningful way. Studies have found teenagers who provided the highest levels of social support to those impacted by a tragedy or disaster were the ones who went on to express the most confidence about their ability to face challenges in their own lives. Because what they're gaining as they are working to help others is true education. It is about the process, critically interrogating where you are, what you need, and what it will take to get there. You can change your life. You can improve your working conditions. And you can do that and help others as well. And for each finish line you cross, bring 10 other people with you. For each accolade that is bestowed upon you, and there will be many in the decades to come, share it with the 100 others. Say their names. Hoist them up in one collective triumph because you didn't do it alone. You see, your accomplishments, all that they are not only yours. And to successfully continue, you have to have that collective group behind you and beside you. People in power will always be comfortable with the way things are. It makes sense. The way things are benefits them in every way possible. But they are few. We are many. There is a reason why voter suppression happens to the young. Every child in Birmingham, 1963, left school to gain a better education for themselves and all that would come behind them, including you. At 17, Malala Yousafzai was 17 when she received the Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Because of education. I am here because of education. There is no limit to the amount of good you can do in this world. And indeed, there is much good to be done. And I believe you all can and will lead us. Chicago is truly lucky to have you. And as such, it owes you a critical, powerful, rigorous education. I encourage you all to go get it. As I said before, I show up for you. Please reach out to Lisa Davis for my contact information if you have questions, want to talk more about this or other topics, and if I can help you achieve your wildest dreams. Spoiler alert, I will push you to education. I'm going to finish a little bit early because I do want to leave more time for the questions that you put forth to me before and answering those. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson, for that wonderful presentation and encouraging us to speak our mind and evaluate the process and bring others with us to join in on our success because change is good. We have a few questions. The first question will be, what was your first or most memorable encounter, either in the role as a student or a teacher, with inequitable schooling practices and policies?
That is a great question. Thank you. I've had many ever since, I went to Head Start. And if you don't know, Head Start is a program put forth by the federal government back in the 1970s in the war against poverty, because they found that children who attended preschool did better academically than children who did not. So they created Head Start programs across the country for young people and children who were 100% below the poverty line. So I, along with all of my cousins and other friends, went to Head Start. And it was there that it was very clear that schooling was inequitable, from the micro interactions to people not being able to pronounce my name and yet could pronounce Tchaikovsky really easily, could pronounce all of these other really hard European names quite easily, and yet couldn't pronounce Shanta. But I'll give you an example that is more recent, shall we? So I have two children in the Chicago public school system. And one of the lovely things that the Chicago public school system did is they did a incentive program that if you went to school and attended for 14 or 21 days in a row, you were granted with this wonderful trip. And it was designed to be an incentive. But what incentives like that don't recognize is that there are children who are dealing with an incredible amount of social problems that are of no fault of their own. Children who are dealing with homelessness, who are doing everything they can to get to school, and yet can still miss half the day and be counted absent, right? So how is that equitable treatment? How are we showing up for young people who are struggling in different ways to still make it to school, and yet punishing them by not giving them these really wonderful incentives that perhaps should be available to each and every one of us, right? So it's not just the big things. It's not just these systemic inequalities of schools that are populated by Black and Brown people the most are the ones that are least resourced, the ones given the least amount of money and qualified teachers, right? So we know that schools that are in impoverished regions and teach a mostly Black and Brown population are given less resources. They have less AP courses. They have less extracurricular activities, right? So it's not just on that grand scale, it's also the micro things that happen, the small interventions that happen that leaves a lot of students out and feeling disengaged. And then of course we come on the backside and we blame them for dropping out of a place that they never truly felt that they belonged to. So I hope that answers your question, at least a little.
Yes, it does answer my question very well. What is one piece of advice you would give anyone that feels at a disadvantage because of their socioeconomic background, such as race, status, where they come from, but would like to pursue a college degree?
I would say don't ever give up. Be wary. I'll say this, be wary of people who say that college isn't for everyone, right? Be wary of people who say that. Be wary of people who say, if you don't have the amount of money you need to go to college, then maybe you shouldn't go. Maybe you should spend your time saving money or doing something else. Be wary of those folks, right? You want to get a mentor or someone you trust to help guide you through this process, right? So there's a lot of social and cultural capital that goes into the matriculation to college. It's one of those hidden curriculum things we don't tell you about in high school. It's one of those things that certain people who are very advantaged economically know about, but don't share with others. There are many ways to pay for your college education. The only thing is, you don't understand or get access to those ways to pay until you're accepted. So it's one of those things that happens after you get accepted into a college. It's funny how we can figure out how to make it work. We can figure out how to get you there and how to pay for it. But if you're not doing everything you need to get accepted into a college, you'll never know those things existed in the first place. But there are many ways to afford college. So be wary of people who say college may not be for you simply because you're disadvantaged economically. I say the latter. I say something very different. I say, if you're economically disadvantaged, your benefit is to go to college. It is one of the only ways of social and economic mobility in this country.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson, if you don't mind, I have one last question.
Great.
If you weren't an educator, what would you do?
Oh, that's a great question. What would I do? I would make furniture. I would make wooden furniture. I'd make wooden rocking chairs for you all to sit around on your porch, to rock in the evening hours with your unsweetened tea or whatever you drink. I would make beautiful bookcases and beautiful coffee tables. I would work with my hands and I would work with wood. That's probably what I would do if I were an educator. And yet, even in doing that, I would still be a teacher, right? I would still be teaching others how to do this craft. As I do now, I see teaching as its own craft, and I teach others how to do it with rigor, fidelity, and love. I would do the same in making furniture.
Thank you so much, Ms. Robinson, for
You're
encouraging
welcome.
us to go to college and to speak our minds and to enjoy change, because change can be for the better.
Thank you.
It is it is now my pleasure to introduce one of our panel speakers, Sybil Madison. Sybil Madison serves as a deputy mayor for education and human services in the mayor's office. As a clinical and community psychologist, Dr. Madison has focused her career on re-imaging urban education so that all children achieve equitable educational outcomes. Her work has addressed system-level changes by facilitating the learning and collaboration of adults. A lifelong learner, Dr. Madison has also taught K-12, undergraduates, and graduate students in Chicago across numerous institutions. It is great to have you here today, Deputy Mayor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Really great to be here with you. And I just want to say thank you for all the work you're doing in your service to the city. The mayor is so excited to have the Chicago Youth Service Corps as a program that started under her administration. So, and sends her gratitude to you as well. I'll just say a little bit about myself. As was mentioned, trained in psychology. So I did my undergrad in psychology and then went to graduate school, studied to be a clinical and community psychologist, and studied to be a researcher as well. So most people know that clinical psychologists, study issues that people are dealing with that affect their functioning. Community psychologists study systems and think about how we can create healthier systems and prevent folks from having challenges. And so as a community psychologist, I believe that we all seek to be well. I believe that we all have resilience that enables us to deal with adversity. And I believe that if we can create stronger, more positive environments, whether those environments are in community, in schools, in organizations, that people will be able to achieve the health and wellness that they naturally desire to achieve. So as a community psychologist, those are my values and kind of what I've always brought into my work. I grew up all over the place. My dad first was in the Air Force. So I was born in London. And lived there for the first 2 years of my life. And then he and my mom, who were married as 19-year-olds, so they were high school sweethearts and got married soon after high school. When they came back to the States after serving for a while, my dad actually went back to college. He was a college dropout. He doesn't like me saying that, but his first time in college, didn't work out. He went into the service. And then when I was young, I saw my dad, work full time and go back to school at night. And then he ended up working at IBM for most of his career. So we moved around a lot because of the Air Force. And then we moved around a lot because if you worked at IBM at that time, which I won't tell my age, but it was a long time ago, every time you got a promotion, you moved to another city. So I ended up going to something like 13 different schools over the course of kindergarten through 12th grade in the DC area in New Jersey. And then I moved to the Chicago South suburbs when I was in 9th grade and graduated from high school in the South suburbs, Crete-Monee. Then I went away to college, went to North Carolina, Chapel Hill undergrad. So I followed Michael Jordan there, and then went to California for my graduate degree at Berkeley. So have traveled a lot, been to a lot of places. And I think moving around a lot as a kid has, made me a very flexible person, which is a good thing. I came back to Chicago in 1995. And did a lot of work on the South Side, all in schools. So my whole career I've worked in schools and in communities, and believe that working in partnership with people closest to the issues that we're trying to improve is so important. And so I have spent my career collaborating around issues that are important to people who are trying to seek to be healthy and well. So I will turn it over to Candace to say a little bit about herself. And I will say that it is my great pleasure. This is one of my close collaborators. And it's been great working side by side with her on the Racial Equity Rapid Response Team, which is focused on mitigating COVID in the communities in Chicago that have been hardest hit. So I'll turn it over to you, Candace.
Thank you so much for being here, Sybil. Now I would like to introduce Candace Moore. Once in office, Mayor Lori Lightfoot appointed Candace to serve as the city's first ever Chief Equity Officer. Candace works to advance policies and practices that promote equitable outcomes across city services and resources. Prior to serving the city, she worked at the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, where she focused on organizing legal advocacy resources to address unequal school discipline and barriers throughout Chicago. Candace's dedication to public service and advocacy is fueled by her own trials and triumphs and the countless stories of people who continue to be unfairly met with systemic barriers. It's great to have you here with us, Candace.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Sybil, and right back at you. Sybil and I have been kind of co-creators, partners in justice, especially around a lot of our COVID work pertaining to our some of the communities most hardest hit by COVID, and it has been tough. It has been humbling, but there's a beauty and resiliency that I've just really gained a lot from as we all go through this moment. So I'm really grateful for being on the same team and being in partnership together. I'm sort of racking my brain with what to talk about in terms of the things that I think I could kind of offer to this space, and I could, avoiding telling the entire origin story. I'm just trying to think. So I, before I came to the city, so I guess maybe let me start where I'm at and then kind of back it up a little bit. So I have the pleasure of serving as the city's first Chief Equity Officer. This is a position that is new to this administration. And our goal is, one, we're building up this Office of Equity and Racial Justice, really with the goal of trying to build equity throughout the way the city does its business. And that's really important for me to say, is that equity, we are building it into how the city does its business, not as an attachment or an add-on or a side program, but one of my goals is to make sure that I am working across all the many different areas of the city, departments, the mayor's office, sister agencies, et cetera, really asking how are we thinking about equity as part of our process, as part of how we do our work, how we deliver services, how we think about policy, how we do community engagement, which means I ask people a lot of questions. Is kind of how it boils down. My job is to be the person in the room saying, well, let's look at the data, what might be going on? Have we talked to people? Do we really understand what's going on? Can we learn more? Can we do more? And to me, those are some of the fundamental things. I think sometimes equity work feels a little fuzzy for people, but ultimately it's about how do we make our outcomes more fair and more just for people. And that means we got to understand where people are at. We got to understand where we're at, and we got to figure out new ways, bigger ways to have impact in the work. And so that's kind of how I see my job here at the city. Only been here a little over a year, but it has felt like much longer than that, given all of the challenges that we've had over this period of time. I come to this work with a spirit for justice, and I served as an advocate before. I was an attorney at the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And I learned a lot about sort of being in partnership with community and helping to advance and push the needs and the issues that a lot of my clients were facing. I represented young people, especially young people who were at a crossroads with their opportunity to continue in the school system. And it was really important for us to work at that place because I felt like this is a critical point for young people. If someone tells you can't go to school for the next 6 months or the next year, we know that the challenges that you're going to face over those next 6 months, over that year, if and when you go back to school, what you might experience in our community are sort of mission critical. Lots of different things can happen when young people are not in school, when they don't have access to school, when they don't have access to those resources. And so we saw a lot of the disparities that were happening, particularly for Black students, but also Latino students, and recognizing that it made a difference if someone was there by that young person's side saying that, no, they deserve a second chance, or we can come up with a better solution. So whether that was a lawyer, or whether that was a parent, or whether that was just a friend, it makes a difference when someone is next to you, helping to advocate for you. And so that was the premise of our work. And from that spirit, I think about, the roles that we play in the city and the opportunities to push and to think more about what we can be doing to make sure young people, really all people across the city, have what they need. I'll sort of stop there. I could talk a lot more, but I know you guys have questions, so I want to make sure we have time for that as well.
Thank you so much, both Ms. Moore and Ms. Madison. Now I'd like to transition us over to the panel. The first question comes from Janaea, and she asks us, what was the biggest factor that contributed to your success? Is there something you wish you had done differently?
I can start.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say that one of the biggest factors that I think, to be honest, that really sort of helped me drive my successes is my family. I immediately think about my mom and my grandmother. Without those women in my life holding me down, believing in me, despite whatever circumstance we were facing, I wouldn't be here where I am today. I remember my mom is from Inglewood. She was born and raised there. I was raised in Aurora. And I would always, my mom she went to college. And so she had an expectation for her children that we were going to go to college. Now, we didn't have money to go to college, right? But that never was, that's not that wasn't the analysis, right? Like, you are going to go to college, you're going to be, you're going to be successful, you're going to work hard, and you're going to figure it out. And that spirit, that seed that was planted into me, taught me early on that I can't be limited by my circumstance. I can figure things out. I have the ability to figure things out. I have the ability to learn, to grow, to get what I need. The question is, will I do the work? Can I find the support? Right? Like that's always how I've come at this. And my grandmother, the same way. Like, she couldn't help me. So I'll share that my mom passed when I was starting my second year of college. And she was sick right, at the end of my high school and right as I started college. And my grandmother, she did not go to college, right? And so as I would have these challenges that I had to navigate, there were things that, she couldn't help me with, but she knew that she could love me. She would give whatever she could give. And again, that seed that my mother had planted, that you can figure it out. You can, look to the people who support you, be smart, work hard, you'll get to where you need. And those are the things that I think contribute to my success. I would say the things that the latter part of the question, the thing that I kind of would do over again is I was really hyper focused on a plan. I knew I wanted to graduate. I knew I wanted to go to law school. And I feel like I spent a lot of time just executing a plan and wasn't actually sort of experiencing all of the new and different kinds of opportunities. So I look back sometimes and said, man, I should have studied abroad. Yeah, you didn't have money to study abroad, but you can work hard, you can figure, those things. But I missed that opportunity. Or there were these jobs or these groups that I didn't think of, when I first made my plan in high school, right? And so I think the thing I look back on and the thing that I try to honor now is that I still work hard. I still have a plan, all of these things, but I also am constantly paying attention to opportunities around me to build, to grow, to think bigger than what I could have imagined when I sort of the day before, the year before, whatever. So I sort of encourage people to think that way as well.
Yeah, my answer is very similar to Candace's. I would say the biggest factor in my success is my family, my parents. I mentioned that, they got married at a young age and, raised us. I remember there was a magazine called Parenting that would just be in the living room. So, my mom was figuring it out as she was going. I think they were 22 when they had me. And then my brother came along a couple years later. But my parents supported me unconditionally. And then when I think back on it, there are a lot of things that I hated that they made me do that really have made a difference in my life. We went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, every week. And I hated it. But even though I don't attend the church that I grew up in, I have a very strong sense of faith. My parents were always involved in service. My mom was an election judge a couple weeks ago, and I grew up seeing that. And so my commitment to serve and comes from them. They made me practice the piano for my piano lessons, and I hated it, but it made me persistent. So there were a lot of things that were part of my upbringing that at the time I was like mad at my parents about, but I see the fruits of all of those things. If I would do something differently, it's similar to what Candace said. The older that I've gotten, the more that I have asked myself the question, will you regret it if you don't do X or if you don't do Y? And so I try to remind myself to think about opportunities in that way. Will you regret it? when I was working on my dissertation, I was in graduate school, I wasn't finished. My advisor was riding me, and it took me 9 years to earn my PhD. So I was in the program a little bit longer than most people. And so my advisor was always giving me a hard time about it. But around that time, my parents had this amazing opportunity through IBM to live in South Africa. And they lived there for 5 years shortly after the end of apartheid. So when Mandela was president. And that's one thing that I regret. I wish that I had picked myself up and just moved there and experienced living there. I visited a couple of times, but I didn't live there, and I could have, because I was just working on my work. I could have worked on it, like today, we're remote, I could have worked on it anywhere. So I wish at that time, at that age, I had asked myself the question, will you regret it if you don't do this? And so that's one thing I would have done differently. And I try to think that way about, will I look back on this 10 years later, 10 years from now, and regret that I didn't take the opportunity?
Thank you, thank you. I can definitely relate to a few things that you've said. Our next question comes from Ashanti. What are some examples of the policies and practices that promote equitable outcomes across city services and resources?
That is such a great question. One of the things, this is my first time in a government role. And so there's so many things being now on the inside that I just never knew how things worked. For example, people are voting on the budget now for next year. And whatever is voted on, that's kind of what we're locked into in terms of what the city has money to spend on all of next year. And what often happens is people come in and they say, well, can you do this? Can you do that? And, in many ways, we're limited with what we can do because it was the year before that we made some decisions about how we were going to use and spend our money. So in relationship to that question, I think we are, and Candace can speak more to this, really trying to come up with ways that we can engage people early on, way before these decisions have to be made, because oftentimes it's later when people come to us and when we don't have that many tools. So we've been engaged in some assessment of kind of how we spend our money and thinking about who receives funds from the city. And I'm talking more about social services, the social services part of city services, and beginning to, analyze where our dollars are landing, and bring an equity lens to that to understand, are there gaps? Do we tend to fund larger organizations over smaller organizations? Are there places in the city that have never been supported through city funds? Are there ways that we set up our grants that have unintended consequences in terms of people not being able to be competitive to receive those resources? I was here for the tail end of Dr. Robinson's part, and she was talking about, the incentive for kids to attend school and how what may look or sound like a good thing on the front end has unintended consequences and excludes people, and sometimes excludes the very people who need access the most. So I would say that many of us in our seats are now looking at those things to make sure that we can change those procedures so that we can make sure that we're distributing kind of resources more equitably.
And I'll share an example that I think is not too far from like a real life example that we had here. So we really did provide housing assistance through COVID. Let's say for this is my fake example purposes, we had $100,000, which means, and we're gonna give each person $1,000. That means we can give 100 people $1,000, right? We have $100,000. So how do you distribute that? We got a whole lot more than 100 people in the city. It's COVID, and a lot of people could use $1,000 right now for their rent, for food, for et cetera. So we're the city. How do we make a decision about who gets what? And these are like real questions we have. So one easy answer could be, we'll put up an application. You can apply. Whoever comes in first, the first 100 people get $1,000, and we'll get it done. And that's, easy, clean. But is that fair? Is that equitable? Did we do everything we could do, or could we do more to ensure that more people have a shot at it? More people who really need it have access to it? And so there are choices we can make in how we even set up that application. We could say, instead of first come, first serve, we will accept applications between this period and that period. And whatever applications that we get in, that'll be the pool that we sort of decide from. We can say 30% of these applications will go to people who are at the lowest levels of income, because we want to make sure some money goes there. We're not saying people who are above that don't need it, but we want to make sure that at least a good amount. So we can say, however we lottery this, we're gonna make sure 30% goes. Like, these are equity choices that we can make in the design of our programs. And this is kind of what I mean by equity and how the city does its business. So it can be as simple and as specific as, how are you gonna give out $100,000 when you know the need is great, to as big and as macro as how we're gonna make sure all, student achievement is on the same playing field for every young person in Chicago. That's complicated only because there are a lot of factors there, but that's also the question we have to ask. And so I think when we think about equity, we think from the micro to those big, big macro questions. And it is about pushing ourselves, thinking creatively, thinking differently, saying, okay, yes, we have a challenge. We have a thing that we need to figure out, but how can we learn? How can we ask more questions? Could we do things different to really drive things to where they need to be?
Thank you for that. Our last question would be, how can we come together as a community to create a safe environment for our youth to become young adults and start a new path for them to succeed in life?
That's a great question and a big question. But I think a necessary question. So I think there are lots of ways that we can come together. I think the way I think about this is, how do we come together to make sure that young people are heard, that we know it, that the young people tell us what is needed in order to create safety, to tell us what's going wrong, what's not working, what can be done. How do we come together to share knowledge? Us share knowledge about how the city works. Young people share knowledge about how their neighborhoods and how their communities work. How do we actually share and build that required knowledge that's going to be needed to do this work? How do we think about resources? Yes, the city has some resources. Government has a lot of resources, but that's not where all the money and community exists. So think about philanthropy, think about business. How do we work together to execute on ideas and strategies? How do we hold true values around transparency, equity, inclusion, diversity, so that whenever we're coming for whatever purpose, we are coming and respecting one another, we have a shared vision, and that we're working together. So, I think about this along those lines, but I think the how looks a lot of different ways and has to consider a lot of different things. But fundamental to me is, how am I constantly trying to do better? How am I learning each day? I don't have all the answers. A lot of times people say, Kiss, you're the chief equity, you're the expert on equity. I know a lot about equity, but I think what I know best is that I learn most from people. We can build more together than I can build by myself. And so with those kind of principles in mind, that's how I approach the work, and I think that's what it's going to require to build true safety, so that people can really thrive, young people can thrive, and have the environment that they need.
Yeah, I would just add, I totally agree. We need youth voice. We need youth to tell us what that looks like. I will also just put in a little commercial for the youth initiative that we do have here out of the mayor's office that we launched during COVID, My Shy, My Future. In our conversations that we have had with young people, especially last school year, young people told us what we believe, which is if we have opportunities for young people to be engaged, they will choose to be engaged. You know, when we did have focus groups and roundtable sessions with youth and asked them about safety and gun violence, they said, we need programs, we need more after school programs. So My Shy, My Future is an initiative that is working on that, trying to put all the programs that the city offers, as well as programs all across the city that community-based partners offer in one place. So that's one part of what we're doing. As a city, we're using that to start looking at the programs that we provide so that we can identify where there are gaps, where we have what we would call opportunity deserts, where there aren't enough programs for young people to plug into. And as a city, we need to address that. And then at a community level, we're working on the ground in partnership with community partners in Austin, Back of the Yards, Garfield Park, and Roseland right now, starting with 4 communities where we're trying to bring together community-based organizations and other caring adults, educators from school, to do the same thing, to say, what are the opportunities in this community? To talk to young people in that community and say, what's missing? What do you want to be involved in? To figure out as the adults, as the responsible adults, to figure out how to get more of what young people want in those communities, and to be accountable to the young people in those communities and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get them connected to those opportunities. So if you're a person who lives in Austin, Back of the Yards, Garfield Park, or Roseland, then we want to engage you in this work that we're doing with My Shy, My Future. And Sarah Russell, who's on the line, can be the bridge for that. But that's the work that we're trying to do right now. It's a little challenging because of COVID. A lot of things that people are offering are virtual, and a lot of us, myself included, are tired of being online all day for work or school, and then doing some kind of after school program online as well. But we think that the city owes every young person in Chicago the opportunity to explore their interests, to discover your talents, and to build those talents, and to build a pathway to the future. So check us out at myshyMyfuture.org. But again, if you're in any of those communities, we want you to be a part of this, because we as adults need to respond to what you're telling us you want and need.
Thank you so much, Sybil and Candace. I really do appreciate you guys coming here to answer our questions. I think it's really important that we as youth can be able to talk to people who are in charge in our city, and it's just really important. So thank you again for coming here with us. Now I'm
Thank
going
you for
to
having us.
Thank you for having
welcome.
us.
Yes, you're so welcome.
Do we get to hear DJ Day Groovy, or did we miss out?
I think you guys missed out. She might be back on though.
Okay.
She's playing at the end, so stay tuned.
All right. Now we're going to hand it over to Senior Connect.
Hello all. My name is Andres Rendon. I'm 17. I'm from Back of the Yards, and I'm a junior at Lane Tech. And this is my partner, Cristo Panfilo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cristo Panfilo. I'm 22 years old and from the Back of the Yards. I recently graduated from Robert Morris University with a degree in computer networking. This fall, Andre and I have been working on a project called Senior Connect. We've been working with the Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council to help senior citizens adapt to a new way of life. We provide tablets and offer classes to the seniors so that they are able to communicate with their loved ones via Zoom or Skype.
Thank you, Crystal and Andres. I really like what you guys are doing. It's amazing because I know it is hard for the older people to get in the gist of things now. But I do have a question for you guys. What did you and your team enjoy the most while working on this project?
What we enjoyed the most was definitely being able to help out senior citizens in these times of COVID, because as you know, many people can't get together for Thanksgiving, and through this Senior Connect, we're able to give them that ability to be able to connect to their loved ones, even if they're far away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now our announcements. So everybody will be getting their own Chicago Youth Service Corps hoodie and their own mask for free. Also, mark your calendars for Thursday, December 17th. That is our final event, and you surely don't want to miss it.
Thank you, Sierra, for those updates, announcements. Now we're going to pass it over to Operation Community Giving Back.
Hi, my name is Tyrell Williams. I'm 17 years old. I go to Urban Prep Charter School, and I am with Youth Service Corps, Children's Home and Aid. This is my partner, Marquise Wardell.
Marquise Wardell, I'm 20 years old. I'm currently in college. I go to Roosevelt University, studying business administration. My group, we making COVID kits for the homeless, which contain a bar of soap, a mask, a toothbrush, and hand sanitizer. Each person have 20 bags that we put together, and we're going out like we're gonna make a day and go out and pass it out to the homeless people.
That sounds very awesome and cool, and thank you for helping us. What did you and your team enjoy the most while working on this project?
What we enjoyed the most about this project was giving back to the Inglewood community, those who aren't able to protect themselves during the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't really attention when it comes down to the COVID-19 pandemic towards Inglewood, so any chance we get to give back to the community, we make it our top priority.
Oh my gosh, hearing everybody speaking about, their projects, their presentations, and especially, the deputy mayor coming out and saying a few words to us, it's a very special thing, especially, with everything going on. And, it's just amazing, seeing everybody come together. It shows some hope for the future despite COVID. And of course, I would like all of you to know this, it's not the buildings that make Chicago, it's the people that make Chicago. And I want to thank you all again for coming on here. And remember, stay safe and wear a mask.
Thanks, everyone. Again, I'm DJ Day Groovy, and thanks for coming out.